What is the scariest thing you've ever seen in your life that you can't explain? When I was a child, both my parents went to work early, so they would drop me off at my grandmother's to eat breakfast and go to school from there. My grandmother died my junior year in high school, and I started coming straight home from school. During this time, my mother started complaining that when she get home from work, the receiver of the phone, an 80s-style corded push-button phone, next to her bed, was left off the base. I wasn't using the phone, but she would insist I must have because the phone was hung up properly when she left for work. One day, I got home a little early. Now I need to pause and tell you about the layout of our apartment. From the front door, I looked directly into the living room, dining room, the door to the kitchen, and the short hallway that led to my parents' bedroom and my bedroom. There was no other door. The windows were old-fashioned, narrow casement windows with screens, and we were on the 3rd floor. Anyway, as soon as I walked in the door, I clearly heard 2 footsteps in my parents' bedroom. I dropped my school bag and foolishly ran to the bedroom. It wasn't far and took only a few seconds. I got to the bedroom and no one was there. However, I immediately noticed that the receiver of the phone on my mother's bedside table was on the floor. It was placed so that the cord to the base was stretched out as far as it could go. I later tried to replicate the placement by shaking the table, tipping the phone, etc. I could never get the receiver off the base. When I finally resorted to knocking it off with a finger, it would fall on the table or next to it. The only way I could replicate the placement of the receiver where I found it was to carefully stretch the cord, place it, and hold it for a few moments. It could not have gotten to that spot by accident. When I found the phone, I hung it up, and it immediately rang. I answered it, and it was my dad. He asked what was wrong. I asked him why he asked. He said he had called, apparently just before I got home, and someone, he thought it was me, answered the phone but never said anything. He finally hung up and had been trying to call back and only got through after I hung up the phone. I've never figured out what happened. I definitely heard footsteps, and I'm just as certain there was no one there. No one went by me. The windows in the bedroom were not disturbed, and my parents had too much stuff under the bed and in the closet for anyone bigger than an infant to hide in either spot. Also, after this, my mother never found the phone disturbed again. It was around 1998. My family and I had just moved into an old clapboard house on the edge of town. It had a huge backyard with a 6-foot wooden privacy fence on one side and a metal chain link fence about 4.5 feet high around the other 3 sides of the yard. Neighbors on one side, the privacy fence side, a small grass alley that ran behind the back with a street light, and then another yard, etc. Our bedroom was an old converted sunroom on the back of the house that faces the backyard. It had floor-to-ceiling windows all along the back wall looking into the backyard. We didn't have many options as to where to place our beds, so my headboard was against the windows, and my brother's bed was about 8 feet away, with his headboard against the opposite wall with the foot of the bed facing the windows. One night we were up pretty late. I was in my bed, and he was in his, just talking about random things, when suddenly he got quiet. I figured he fell asleep, but then I heard him whispering in a shaky breath, so I'm like, "What?" And I hear him whisper again. So again I'm like, "Speak up, I can't hear you." And he goes, "Don't move and be quiet," in a forced whisper. But I, thinking he's messing with me and like, "Bitch, why?" And I'm looking at him, and mind you, my head is to the windows, and he's pointing into the backyard behind my bed. So quickly sit up and turn around and see this huge dog head staring almost nose to glass through the window right behind my bed. I'm almost nose to nose with this thing. Just a single pane of glass and about 10 inches of empty air separate me for this thing. Now when I say I screamed, I mean I screamed. Not my proudest moment, but hey, I was like 10 years old. Well anyways, the thing quickly ducked under the window and then ran to the side of the yard and jumped the 4.5-foot chain link fence and bolted off into the darkness. My dad came running into the room with our mom right on his heels. We were able to get out that something was looking through our window, So Dad ran back to his room and grabbed his shotgun and then headed out the side door of the house and into the backyard. Unfortunately, or fortunately, IDK, he didn't find anything. Wrote it off as, I had a nightmare and my brother wouldn't admit to seeing anything. So I took the blame and was told to quit messing around, go back to bed, typical parent response, etc. Well, later that night, maybe an hour or so, after I begged my parents to let me sleep in the living room, because leaving the house wasn't an option, and still being refused, I was made to sleep in my room. So again, my brother and I are in our room with these floor-to-ceiling windows. We are just completely rattled. We are both huddled in his bed, staring out the windows, when we see this thing come walking along the chain-link fence on all fours, and the fence only comes up to its mid-shoulder, so this thing is huge. It sniffs the ground, does a few circles, and then hops the fence into the backyard like it's nothing. It walks over to the window and again gets nose to the glass like it's trying to see in. We are panicking the whole time. Well, my brother is like, fuck this. And soon as he steps off the bed, we hear this loud bang, and there is a flash of light. The thing at the windows gets knocked sideways, and without even missing a beat, it turns and runs across the full length of backyard, jumps the back chain link fence. It cleared the fence the alleyway, and then landed in the back neighbor's yard. This is easily a 15 to 20 foot jump minimum, clearing their fence like it was nothing, and was gone at a dead run, up beside that house, and off into the darkness on the other side. My dad comes tearing around the side of the house with his shotgun in hand and makes a mad dash for the side door and slams it shut behind him. He is screaming and hollering, "We gotta go." We pack up and head to a hotel that night. My mom absolutely refused to believe we saw what we said we saw, and we only lived there for about 6 months. It rattled my dad so much, he didn't even want to come back. He told my mom that we were just gonna move that next day, but she wouldn't allow it. After about 6 months, she conceded, and we moved. Mind you, this is in the coastal plains region of Texas. We have no large wild canines here. We have stray dogs and coyotes, but nothing that would even remotely touch on how big this thing was. My dad swears he shot that thing with a slug from about 15 feet away with his 12-gauge shotgun right underneath its left arm, hitting it in the ribs where its vital organs are, and nothing, it just ran off. He said the thing that freaked him out the most was that when he saw the thing jump the fence, it walked towards our wind. He said, "Your brother has never looked so scared and never been one with just making stuff up." So after going back to his room with my mom as he was laying there thinking about it, he decided that if my brother was a white, as he was, then we had to have seen something. So he grabbed his gun, in case he had to scare some creeper out of our yard, and figured he was going to go through the garage and out by the far side of the house and sneak to the corner to see if someone was peeking in our windows, or if someone was actually messing with us. He never actually thought we saw a huge dog-looking thing, just that maybe with it being dark outside and us being kids with overactive imaginations, maybe we just mistook someone as something. But when he saw that thing come up the side fence, and with the street light in the back alley lighting up the backyard, he saw it, and it freaked him out. He was going to creep back inside until it went up to our window, and he said, as it stood up, he just got this instant feeling of just dread, like something was going to happen to us. My very first job was as a radio DJ at a small hometown radio station in the mid-1990s. This was a tiny building out in the middle of a field with a 500-foot antenna out back and a single road from the main road to the front door. The transmitter was right behind my studio, behind sound-dampening glass, and had a light bulb that was always on. The station was so small that you could see the light bulb in the transmitter room all the way from the driveway roadway. There were only 2 doors, the front door and the back door in the transmitter room. That door didn't even have a handle on the outside, and it was always locked from the inside. It's impossible to enter that door from the outside. I worked the evening shift, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. After my shift, we actually went off the air for the night. I was always the last person there. So after I went off the air, I had to pull commercials for the first hour or two of the morning show, clean dishes, finish up some production work, etc. After working there for a year or so, I had racked up a couple of weird experiences. Shadows scurrying about at the corner of my vision, lights turning off and on. One evening, after getting in and taking over the board, I was just sitting there preparing myself mentally for the next 5 hours. I looked up, out the studio doors towards the front door, and I saw the perfect shadow shape of a man who was probably 6 feet tall. It was there, then not. I went to my boss, who was not a nice person on her nicest days, and said, "So, I have a weird question." She sighed and looked at me, expecting who knows what. "Have you ever felt like someone was here who wasn't?" My boss yelled across the building for someone to come into her office. When that person arrived, she tilted her head at me. "He's seen Jimmy." Supposedly everyone had seen Jimmy, the original owner of the radio station. He popped in from time to time. "He won't hurt you. He's just checking in on the station." So, from then on, Jimmy would make his appearances. His was a harmless presence. My studio faced another, unused studio, and he would flash the lights on and off a few times. I'd say, "Hi, Jimmy. Everything's going well." And it would stop. He turned a water faucet on once. He whispered my name in my ear one night, which freaked me out. At least I think it was him. You see, there was another malevolent being that also lived there at the station. It didn't have a name, and it was about shin high. This one always gave me a really bad feeling. It was the one who would dart beside me, its shadow just in the corner of my eye. I always knew it was there, just because I would feel downright freaked out. One night in particular was the scariest I've ever been. Here it is, 30-ish or so years later, and I still can't explain it. As soon as everyone left the building for the night, I got that feeling like it was there. I just turned on all the lights, turned the music up, and tried to ignore it. The longer the night went on, though, the worse it got. Lights were flashing everywhere. A dot matrix printer in the sales office started going on its own, something that never happened, and that office was locked. Then, ceiling tiles starting moving up, as if someone hit them with a broom handle. They started closest to me from my studio, down the hall, and ended at the front door, which was locked. Then, the front door opened. I went down the hall to close and relock it. When I did, I saw through the door window that there was a coffee cup and a cigar on the front stoop. There was no reason for them to be there. On my way back to the studio, I got a big burst of cigar smell, like an invisible smoke cloud, right in my face. I knew my usual duties were required, but I didn't care at this point. I went off the air, grabbed my keys, and noped right the heck out of there. I ran to my car, backed up, and looked through the front door. A figure was standing inside, silhouetted in front of the transmitter light. I peeled out and went straight home. Now all of that is scary, but it's not the most unexplainable thing. Is it 100% impossible someone didn't somehow sneak in and play a very elaborate prank on me? There's a slight, minuscule chance someone did, but to this day, I don't know how. It was an old, tiny building, but I still hold the possibility that it could have been a prank. I got home and told my mom this whole story. My heart was still pounding. She was all, "Well, it's bedtime." So I go to my bedroom and dial up a BBS to write someone what had happened to me. As I was typing up the story, my modem speaker turned on. If you are old enough to remember dial-up modems, you know the speaker doesn't just turn on once the connection is made. They wouldn't even turn back on if someone in the house picked up the phone. You'd just get a lot of bad data on the screen and your modem would disconnect. The speaker turns on, and a voice comes from the speaker, mixed with the static of the data connection. It screeched, "Help me!" The speaker then turned off, and nothing else changed on my screen. That speaker turning on and the voice coming out is solidified in my brain. I remember the screech like it was yesterday. I have no explanation for it. My mom was the only other person in the house, and she wouldn't have done something like that. She couldn't have done something like that. It was the scariest night of my life. I am as skeptical as you can be about anything ghost or UFO related, but that night is beyond my ability to explain. As kind of a footnote to all of this, I go back to that station every now and then when I go home to visit. I still know some people who work there. Jimmy is still active and is well known by the staff. The little scary one? No one else has reported seeing him.